The concept of deliberate practice is a concept that I actually got from the book So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. And the idea of deliberate practice is ensuring that the time you spend practicing your craft is very deliberate. For example, as a voiceover artist, not just doing many takes of things that you find easy to do, but actually challenging yourself by taking on more challenging projects, challenging yourself by choosing to focus on learning a particular skill and keep going until you can't get it wrong. Myron Golden often says that an amateur learns something until they get it right, whereas an expert learns something until they can't get it wrong. When it comes to deliberate practice, if you want to be great at the craft of voiceover, you have to make sure that you are putting in deliberate practice in the areas that you need to grow in, or in the areas where you are deficient in, or in the areas that could bring you the most advantage. For example, if you are a bilingual voiceover artist, it may mean deliberately practicing the language that you are less fluent in order to make sure that you are believable in both your native language and the other language. For me, that manifests itself in me practicing different things or different skills in doing voiceovers in French. In French, they're called voix off, les voix off. And here are some of the things that I practice when I know I want to improve on my delivery in delivering French voiceovers. The first is accent, making sure that I pronounce things the way that a French person or a French speaking person would pronounce them, and not necessarily taking my consciousness of English and applying that to French. And there are some words that are not as clear or straightforward, such that when you see the word as it's written, you may not know whether the sound is meant to be one way or another, but these are things that you need to check out. I'll give you a quick example. So the word plus, Plus, depending on where it is used, it might be pronounced plus or it might be pronounced plus. The important thing is to understand why that word is being used in that particular context and to know whether you need to add the S sound at the end of it or not. These are things that require deliberate practice. Also, for me, sometimes the French R can get me into trouble when I have to read a script really fast. So in order to make sure that I am able to master that, I have to practice saying words in French that have a lot of R's in them, or sentences that have a lot of R's in the words in that sentence. That way I can keep building, and that way I can get to the point where I can do it without the use of conscious resources. Myron Golden, again, great guy who gives a lot of good life and business advice, mentions that mastery is the ability to execute a task without the use of conscious resources. So I need to get to the point where I don't need to be conscious of myself saying words with R properly in French, because I've mastered it so much that I can do it unconsciously. So it would mean I would practice saying a lot of words like répondez or rouge or rouler, anything that has the R sound in it, and particularly words that have multiple R sounds in it. Again, the idea is for me to take that thing which is complicated, or not necessarily complicated, but that thing which may not be as easy for me to do initially, and make sure that I keep practicing and keep improving until the point where I don't need conscious resources to be able to execute on them. That for me is how it manifests in building my skill as a bilingual voiceover artist. However, there are other places in voiceover that I also need to practice. And the idea is to take singular things, take particular aspects of voiceover, break them down into the smaller parts, and make sure to work on those individual parts, and then afterwards integrate what I've learned into the whole. I'll give you another example of this. In voiceover, for example, sometimes you need to play character voices, and it's quite handy if you have a few characters in your repertoire. So, for example, I could have Cindy, who is an American reporter, versus Ama, who is a Nigerian schoolgirl. The way I would deliver those two characters are very different. It would be very different in the accent I use. So Ama would have more of a Nigerian accent, whereas Cindy would have a more formal American accent. Again, being able to master each of those accents and those characters means that at the point where they are called upon, I can easily just reach out and execute on those. At the moment, I haven't mastered that yet. I've mastered my Nigerian accent, and that's because I am Nigerian and I did grow up in Nigeria. But what I do need to do in that situation is actually spend time thinking about what a Nigerian schoolgirl would sound like. How do I communicate some level of naivety that comes with youth to make it believable that it is a Nigerian schoolgirl that is speaking? How do I make sure that I add in the pauses and maybe I know a few slangs or whatever it is that would mean that I can deliver believably on that character, versus how do I make sure that I can do the reporter voice very well in a believable format in an American accent and do it with the gravitas that is needed for newscasters or reporters. Again, these are things that I could sit down and focus on, practice, and develop. The alternative to this would be on deliberate practice, which is just I audition for any and every job that comes my way, or I just find random scripts and just play them out. The important thing is to build on skills that you have. Another book that could be worth reading to do with skills is How to Get Better at Almost Everything by Pat Flynn. And in that book, it talks about skill stacking. So taking skills at different levels and sometimes from different domains, learning them to a good level and then combining them, reintegrating them into your skill repertoire, as they would say, in order for you to be able to come to the market or come and offer people something rather unique and more unique than if you only mastered one skill. Another word for this, or another term for this, could be called career capital, where you've built skills and experiences over time that makes you unique and differentiates you and gives you a unique offering, such that having unique skills and abilities leads to you being able to get unique and differently skilled jobs that would be more appealing to you than what the average person would get. So those are my lessons that I learned from the book So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. This is how I would apply it as a voiceover artist to my craft and in building. But again, you may have a different craft you work on, either as a voiceover artist or maybe as something else. The important thing is to take the principles from this and then apply it to your life. I've only really spoken about deliberate practice today. There are other parts of the book that would be worth looking into and delving into deeper in order to see and find lessons that I can apply to my work as a voiceover artist and you can apply to your work as a craftsperson. And when I say craftsperson, the idea in the book is more somebody who has the craftsman mindset, where you are aiming to be good at something in a way that serves the world. So the craftsman mindset asks, what can I offer the world? The passion mindset instead asks, what can the world offer me? But if you're able to take the craftsman mindset, no matter what job you find yourself in or what set of skills you have, the further you'll get along in actually becoming so valuable and so unique that they can't ignore you. I hope these tips help. If they did, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with somebody who it might be helpful to. It probably will be helpful to any of your friends who are looking to find ways of improving on their craft or in their work, or a way to find meaning in what they do, and a way to make sure that the practice and the time they put into learning particular skills are very useful because they've employed the principles of deliberate practice. All right, I'll catch you in the next one. Take care and go record something great.